Welcome to Historic Forest. This video is going to talk about what history is and what you need to know to be a historian. And believe me, you don't have to be a PhD to be a historian. So let's start with what history is. History is everything that has happened in the past. Now that's a lot of information. Everything anybody's done, everything a dinosaur did, anything happened before people started writing things down, they're all a part of history. If you think about what happened in the past before people started writing things down, we have to rely on the work of archaeologists, scientists, oral histories, things that people find, artifacts. All these things tell us a little bit about what history was and help us to put together a picture of what history was. But since it wasn't written down, we have to look for things that aren't in writing. We have to study fossils, bones, but everything changes when people develop a written language. They start writing things down. The things that they write down gives us a view of what was going on. These things weren't necessarily a history book that they were writing. They could have been just an inventory of what they bought from someone and they wrote it down on a clay tablet. It could be hieroglyphics in a building in ancient Egypt. It could be things they unearthed at other archaeological sites. Cave paintings on the wall, early drawings, drawings on rocks. All these things are things that we use to put together history. Now, when people start writing things down and start recording all the oral traditions so that it'll be easier for other peoples to learn them, well, now we start getting a real written history. But oral traditions tend to be exaggerated. What really happened might be changed to make the leader look a little more glorious or to make their cause a little more righteous. Things haven't changed since ancient history when people started writing down oral traditions. Today, people write history books and they are writing history in a way that makes their opinion seem valid. What their country did in the past seemed glorious. What another country did seemed villainous. History that is recorded as a history book is basically telling us the author's opinion on history. Well, a lot of things that happen in history were never put in a history book. And we find all this information recorded in things such as newspapers, inventories, court documents, letters. Actually, I enjoy letters from people. These historic letters really give you an insight on what people were thinking. It's kind of an unfiltered look at what was going on at a point in time. But out there's too much information for any one person to understand everything about history. So we need many people to record what's in history, to do the research, to comb through documents in the archives, to look at records and understand what people are thinking. Many people will take things that they research and find in the past or other people's history books, and they'll put them together to express their own opinion or their own current values, to place judgments on other people from the past. Well, this isn't real history. This is kind of historical fiction. So when you think about what history is, you've got to realize that there's lots and lots of information out there. And we need people to take this information and put it together and give us an accurate picture of what was going on. When I look back, I think of the history textbooks that they used to give me in high school. Now those history books are considered inaccurate, biased. In a few years, the history books we have now will be considered biased and inaccurate, because people are learning things all the time. And every historian who writes a history book tends to put their opinion in it, their views on society. Sometimes they take things that relate to the social values that we have now and push them back on the people from that time period that they're recording the history of, developing theories that have nothing to do with what people were going through at that time, but just the opinion of the author. Once these opinions are read for so long, this becomes the accepted history. What we need today are historians who will record the actual facts and do their best to put the history in the context that it belongs. We don't want historians who try to teach us a social opinion or a theory that they want to push to further their own philosophy or values in life. Now, when I turned 60, I found out that you can sign up for history classes for free at state universities. So that's exactly what I did, because I wanted to understand what a trained historian needs to know. What kind of standards do they use? And what I found out, there are no standards. That people put together history, and the only requirement is that they document where they got the information from. Only one problem is there's no standard for what is significant to be considered history for everybody. There is no standards to say that if an event happens, that it's not just an isolated event, that it's part of a wider history or a larger trend. The only requirement is that you cite your source and you can show someone where you got your information. Well, this hardly makes a good standard for developing history. So once you understand this, you understand that maybe the people that are trained historians don't have an advantage against the normal person who just enjoys history and wants to learn more, write it down, maybe make a video about the history they enjoy, history about their family, that even things that they've done. Basically, anyone can be a historian. And we actually need that. We need people to go back and gather the information, to go through the historical documents and find out what really happened, and not to just accept what people are pushing on us as the history we should accept. We should all question the things that people are telling us about what history means. I've read old letters from people of different time periods, and they just don't match what people are telling us on the news every day about what history really was. I also don't think that there's anything called black history or white history or Asian history. It's all just history. Everything interconnects. All people affect other people. You can't just divide one group out and say that their history is more important than another person's history. Everybody's history is important. And I don't think that we should exclude any history because of someone's race. I don't think race should have anything to do with it. It has to do with what people did in the past that affected everything else. Think of it this way. If you drop a pebble in the water, you will see the rings expand away from the pebble and affect water in other places. If you put a larger pebble in, it affects more water, and we see larger rings. If you drop several rocks in at the same time, they will create multiple rings that will interfere with each other and change the path of each of these rings around the object. Now, if we put a large object, it's going to make a much larger reaction in the water. That's what we've got to look at when we look at history. Events and actions of people cause reactions in other people. Such as if the president asks Congress to declare war on another country, that's going to have a huge effect on everybody. But if someone goes out at night, gets in a fight with somebody and hits them, and they get a bloody nose, sure, that's part of history, but it's not going to have a big impact on the world. But if you have lots of people going out and doing something such as a riot, each individual's actions are just a small part of that event. But it takes the multitude of people to create the event that we will then consider significant. Then we have events in history such as inventions. I mean, we don't know who was the first person who developed a wheel. But history has never been the same since someone developed a wheel. People have used a wheel over and over and over again. And without a wheel, our civilization would not be anything like we know today. So this one invention of one person has affected us more than any war. We have other inventions, such as the combustion engine. Now, this invention wasn't the result of just one person, but the gradual building of knowledge until someone put together these pieces of knowledge to develop this combustion engine. But once we have the combustion engine, it changes history forever. A lot of people think that the things I do don't affect history. Nobody cares. But actually, the things you do affect history. They change history. The things you think about, the ideas you express, When you talk to other people, it changes their actions. When you go buy food, the food you choose to buy may not seem significant, but the choices that everybody goes out and buys affects what kind of food they put in the supermarket. Sales at one supermarket added together with sales of food in other supermarkets result in companies making money, farmers earning a living. What will they plant the next year? Well, it's based on what people bought. Your actions combined with the actions of other people has a huge influence on what history is. Nobody can say they are not a part of history or what they do is not significant to history. Sure, if you get, say, the president, he can make a decision and it'll have a huge impact on lots of people. The actions of a president can be much more significant than other people. That's why we record in history the decisions presidents make, why they made them, why they didn't make them. Such as Harry Truman. When he finally authorized the dropping of the atomic bomb, that changed our world forever. That's probably one of the most significant events in history in the last 100 years. So when historians look at things, they need to look at what is the significance of an event. But they also need to look at what was happening with individuals. Because these individuals, they collectively form our history. No leader can do anything without other people. You can't send an army into battle unless he has an army. And an army is made up of many, many individuals. Some of the generals that he may have serving under him, they may be good generals and lead the army to victory. They may be bad generals and lead the army to defeat. If a general understands tactics, he can defeat a much larger army. Or if he doesn't understand tactics, he can lose to a much smaller army. There are so many individual events and decisions in history that no one can know them all. But as people put together histories, they determine what people after them will know. Me, I really enjoy history. I enjoy going out and doing research, coming through old archives, visiting historic sites, learning what happened in the past, because it helps me understand why things are the way they are today. So I can safely say I'm a historian. The things that I am doing are affecting history, or at least other people's understanding of history. And you can do the same thing if you enjoy history. History is not just recorded and made and documented by trained historians who went to college and got a degree. I've listened to people who have a PhD in history from a major university, and they've told me things that I know are wrong because I've gone to the documentation and looked it up myself, and they got it wrong. So don't be intimidated that somebody else has a fancy degree and they studied history for years. If you enjoy history, if you think history is important, go and explore. Search for the documents. help the rest of us understand pieces of history that have been forgotten or left behind. When my kids were growing up, I did the family genealogy. And when they would be studying things in history, I would tell them, this is what your family was doing during this time period. Your ancestor did this or that. And when they went back to school, they enjoyed history a whole lot more because they could relate to it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you had, hit that subscribe button because I'm planning to make a lot more videos. I hope you'll enjoy these. Join me in my journey through history. Thanks. Bye.